January 1862. During the late heavy rains, a volume of water 200 yards in width flowed through Bloomfield, flooding the first floors of some of the houses to a depth of 1 foot. We advised the inhabitants of that burg to build a levee and insure themselves against the reoccurrence of a like calamity. Hello, Edward Bloomfield Cemetery. Today, with recent events, storms rolling through California, dropping a lot of rain, thought it'd be good to talk about some of the history in regards to Bloomfield and its long history of flooding. From one of the earliest photos I ever seen of the Big Valley House is a gentleman standing on the porch with floodwaters lapping up at the edge of the building. Having grown up in Bloomfield, as many of you have, um, the terrain there is very susceptible to flooding. From go up the valley to the edge of where the Meadow Ranch had the levee road. Water spilling over the top of that, flowing down the valley to the location of, say, the Oddfellows Lodge, which constantly would get flooded. Silt would build up against the northern side of that building, and it's a huge sand deposit would be located there on that north side of the building. We used to play in that sandy area between the building and Durham's house, Mattery's house, and the projects that would try to clean out the canal, including turning the bridge that goes underneath Bloomfield Road between Stormy's and the bell tower, trying to turn that from one port to two ports for additional water flow. That project in 1984, widening of the canal project, two of those in our lifetime, 1970 and again in the 80s. And growing up in Bloomfield, now obviously as a kid, the perspective of floodwater is kind of fun. Quite often we would think about, when the floods come, how are we going to entertain ourselves by creating rafts or boats or whatever we have to do to make that happen, to drive our bicycles through floodwaters. How deep can we go? Dale's brother Gary actually engineered an upside down bicycle, which I'll post a picture, and I think it even made the newspapers, if I remember right. But yeah, floodwaters that would generally be at the intersection of like Cockrell and Sutton, go over to College, kind of, Cockrell, certainly all the way down to Petaluma Valley Ford Road would be flooded. The floodwaters never got up to Church Street, although at the Church and Broderick intersection, there would be floodwaters there. But over the years, people learned about where the floodwaters occurred, and then the homes and buildings that had been built in that area in the 1800s, obviously after a while, they just realized that it was too troublesome to have those buildings exposed to this every year. November 5th, 1878. In the way of improvements, Bloomfield is taking tremendous strides, such as were never known before. Last year, the place was flooded 2 or 3 times, so the people are raising houses and streets with a vengeance. The massive culvert which conducts the creek under the town has been enlarged at great expense. There was many articles published about how difficult the floodwaters and the reoccurrence of them multiple times a year, and the remedies involved in trying to make improvements by elevating roads, elevating houses. And still today, the floodwaters occur. There's not much that can be done. I believe that unless they're willing to somehow rebuild the canal every third, fourth, fifth year, which would be the optimal that they can do. There's really no other solution because it's in such a low valley, which goes all the way out to, Willow Dell itself, Willow Valley, out by Lepores. In When John Mill was building his home at, they referred to it at Willow Dell, there was flooding occurring then. So, it's been a long tradition, and some, beautiful homes were exposed to this flooding too, from William White and the cheese factory, and John Mills and um, Judson property, the current Lepore Ranch, John Judson, and yeah, so it's been an issue. It'll always be an issue, and I guess over time, just people have dealt with it to the best of their ability. Elevated homes, like what was it, in the 1980s, the two-story house on College was actually elevated by, I think, a couple feet. So, because it's the only way that homes are going to survive the flooding. I know the Mason Lodge still gets flooded regularly. The Oddfellows Hall still gets flooded regularly. Um, Matteries was elevated, so that's no longer an issue of flooding. But the area gets flooded, but the home itself doesn't. And the bell tower, I believe, was built with flooding in mind, so the curb around that protects it every winter. The ball field gets regularly flooded, which creates a problem for trying to take care of it. By the time the floodwaters recede out of the corner closest to the Emma Herbert Park, by the time those waters recede and the mud is no longer a problem, the grass is 3 feet tall, which makes it difficult to cut and keep clean. So it's always a bit of a challenge. That's why I try to get in there as late as possible in December or January. If there's only been a few storms by that time, at least it's still accessible. So keep the grass short as possible. And then the field, the Emma Herbert field, floods. About half of it floods. There's a raised part and then a lower part. The lower part, which is closest to this triangle that was owned by Patrick Curry and then his son, where their ranch was, and the potato patch, a large potato patch that they have. There was an article that spoke about how the Curry son was out trying to harvest potatoes in floodwaters. I don't know how that would go, but A for effort. So anyway, I thought I'd post some photos and read a couple articles in regards to flooding in Bloomfield. And if you folks have some photos that you would like to add, please feel free, because I think everybody would enjoy seeing some of the summary of events over the years and how things have looked and how things have changed. All right? Talk with you soon. May 1877. The heavy storms of last winter have left unmistakable signs of the occurrence in Bloomfield and vicinity, in the form of large deposits of sand in several of the streets, washed out roadways, numerous deep gullies, displaced bridges, and areas of considerable extent covered to a depth of 3 to 30 inches with sand and sediment. But Bloomfield and the exceedingly productive valley in which it is situated has not suffered anything like irreparable injury from the storms, and in a few months there will be scarcely any visible indications that they occurred. The village of Bloomfield is pleasantly located except a portion which is on lower ground and subject to floods. In anticipation of future unpleasantness and damage from high water, preparations are being made for raising some of the buildings on Main Street. Bloomfield has several handsome residences, one of the best conducted hotels in Sonoma County, of which Oliver Lefebvre has many years been proprietor.